All right, so the first thing I want to discuss here in the light section are the types of lights that you can create inside of Unity. Now, there's also a fourth light that you can't create. That is, it's a fourth type that's always kind of present in your scenes. We'll talk about that too, though in some previous videos you've already seen it. First things first, though. If we go under the hierarchy panel and under the create menu, you can see that we can create a point light, a spotlight, and a directional light. And those are our three light types. Now, is this the only place we can access these?
No, actually, there's several different places we can get to them from. We can also go up to Game Object, Create Other.
That's right. And we can get them out of here, too.
Right.
And we don't even have to create them necessarily as lights.
Actually, we can turn anything into a light if we really wanted to.
That's true, because a light is really just a component of a game object. So what I'm going to do, I guess just to be fancy, is we're going to make our very own light. So let me grab something to focus the camera up on, and then I'm going to hit Control-Shift-N, and this will create a new empty game object. And then I'll go under the Component menu, come down to Rendering, and we will create a light.
Right. Now notice he didn't specify what type of light, but it comes in default as a point light.
That's right. And the cool thing about that is your light type is actually controlled by a property here inside the light component. So you'll see here we can create spots, we can create directionals, and we can create points. So point light is our default type. Let's go ahead and talk about that. Now, Lee, generally, what is a point light? How do you define a point light?
Well, a point light is a light similar to, say, a candle flame or a light bulb. It emits or radiates light in all directions evenly.
That's right. It just kind of pumps light out in every single direction you'd want it to. It has only one property that is exclusive to point lights, and that is the range. That's how far out this light can go from its source. And it is designated visibly here in your viewport with this really cool yellow sphere that goes around the light. Inside the inspector, if we take the range and we pull it down, you'll see that sphere getting smaller. But we're not limited to just changing this inside the inspector. You'll see around the sphere for the light, we have these little tiny handles. We can click on each one of these, and we can increase and decrease that radius.
Right, and if you notice, there's actually 6 of those. They all do the same thing.
Yeah, it's just whichever one you're closest to and is most convenient to grab. It's always going to be a perfect sphere. You can't change the shape of that. So that's your point light. Again, it's going to blast light out in all directions simultaneously. Now, and the other type of light, or the next type of light I want to discuss, is a spotlight. The cool thing about a spotlight is you've probably already heard of them. I mean, it's kind of like a real-world description for a light. It is going to emit light in a cone, and we can see the shape of the cone here. Now I'm going to rotate the light down so we can see the result here on the ground. And it's not really that bright, though you can see it. Just for demonstration purposes, though, I'm going to move it over here to this kind of darkened area we have in our level. So if you'll pardon me for just a moment, we'll slide this guy back here, where it's just a little easier to see what we're talking about. So there's the result of our spotlight. Now, just like the point light, it has a couple of properties that are exclusive only to it, being the range of the spotlight, which is how far it can blast outward, and you can see the cone actually gets smaller and larger as I adjust that. And we have the spot angle over here in the inspector, and that just increases the size of your angle, or I'm sorry, increases the size of the cone or focuses it down. So
right, it's kind of the spread of the light and how far out from the light will spread.
That's right, and it is in an actual angle. So if we set this to 45 degrees, we have a 45-degree angle of light coming out of the actual spotlight itself. Now, just like with the point light, if we want, we can adjust these right here inside the viewport. So if I grab each one of these handles around the edge of the cone, I can increase the radius of the cone, or I can tighten it up. And if I grab the little handle in the middle, I can control the range of the light and stretch out the distance of that cone. So that's what a spotlight is, and that's how you control it. Now, our third type of light is a directional light. And I'm not even going to create one of those. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is take this light we have, we'll just leave it alone. We already have a directional light up here in our scene. Now, Lee, what is a directional light?
Well, a directional light is a unique type of light in the fact that it emits light in a single direction as if it's from a source that's infinitely far away. And it's infinitely large. So what happens is the light is being emitted in rays that are parallel to one another.
That's right. Where the light rays, if you will, of a spotlight will tend to diverge from one another, all of the rays of a directional light are parallel, so your shadows won't get bigger as they go away from the source.
Right. And it has one intensity, and it never fades.
That's right. Now, that's it has no exclusive properties, nothing that makes it particularly special. It's perfect for things like suns or moons or a really, really, really distant light source. Now, the interesting thing about that, and I just thought I'd throw this out there because I know some people who are just kind of getting into the world of lights and directional lights don't realize this. The position of a directional light is completely irrelevant. Because it's being calculated as if it was infinitely far away and it was infinitely large, where you position it means nothing. Now, often it's a lot easier if you'll position it about where a sun should be in your level, especially if you plan on using something like a lens flare so that when the player looks toward the sun, they see some sort of, a big bright flare in their screen. That's important because if you have if you've just decided, well, it doesn't matter where the sun goes, I can just go ahead and put it over here, you're right in that all of your lighting will be cast in the right direction, and your shadows will look great. It's just your lens flare will be on the entire wrong side of your level. So make sure you do get your directional light, especially for a sun, positioned where it needs to be.
Right, and depending on the size of your level is going to dictate how far away that light has to be, because you could technically walk around your level and your lens flare will follow you around. It's called the parallax error.
Yeah, it'll look like the sun is maybe only 100 feet away, and that's not very convincing. So yeah, keep that kind of thing in mind. Now, we did mention early on in the video that there was a fourth kind of light. It's almost like a secret kind of light. You can't create it, but it is always there to help you, and that is your ambient light.
Right. This is the most basic type of light that you can get. What it does is it illuminates all objects evenly, irregardless of their position, their contour, and it's more of like a fill or a bounce light that it illuminates everything evenly.
That's right. Now, I'm going to access this by going under Edit and jumping down to the Render Settings. And it's here, we can see it. It's really more or less just a setting. So here's our ambient light, and all it has is a color swatch. So I can click on this color swatch, and I can bring this up, and you'll see it's just being evenly applied to everything. If I turn it completely off, this is what our level looks like. And the cool thing about doing this is it illustrates why something like an ambient light can be so useful. Because if this were a real environment, you wouldn't expect the shadows from the sun to go to perfect black. So here we can boost those up by taking our ambient light and kicking it up just a little bit. Now, of course, because our skylight has a particular kind of orangish hue to it, it would make sense if we made our ambient light also take on a little bit of that warm hue as well. It can make things feel a lot more natural. And that's one of those things you can tweak and perfect. You do have to watch out, and I'll just kind of throw this out there, even though we haven't really talked about light mapping yet. The settings that you're using in your ambient light can affect your light map very significantly. So be really careful with where you have that set when you go to bake out your light maps. So that is a quick rundown of all of the light types that you can create, as well as one that you can't, inside of Unity. And let's move forward, taking a look at some of the specific light properties.